Three. Hi there, welcome back to my beautiful channel. My name is Danny Henderson, and I'm particularly excited today because the man on the screen here is really quite a remarkable person with a very, very colorful history. Now, before we start, I'm going to tell you his name is Jim Goodall. He spent 27 years in the Air Force and he retired as a Master Sergeant. Welcome, Jim Goodall. How are you, sir?
I'm delighted to be here. Right now it's allergy season in southern Arizona, and my eyes feel like I have about a half a pound of sand in them. But other than that, life is great. It's going to rain today, which is unusual. We live in the desert, but it's supposed to be in the 70s and 80s from next week on until October.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah.
I came across you after you made a comment on a Facebook post, and I was quite amazed at the comment that you made. And I looked it up, and then somebody else said, "Oh, I remember you saying this very historic statement regarding somebody who was head of Skunkworks." And as we are in full disclosure, as we do not hold back, as the redacted papers are not being allowed anymore, as secrets from the past are finally being revealed, I would love you, sir, to share your deathbed moment with this person and tell us how you met him and
Sure, sure.
what happened to you.
Uh, I'm not sure how I got on. The gentleman's name was Ben R. Rich. He was uh, the president and general manager of the Lockheed Skunkworks. That's the organization that gave us the U-2 spy plane, the F-117 stealth fighter, the Blackbird, and dozens of other programs that could only be developed in a place like the Skunkworks. But for over 20 years, Ben Rich and I had an ongoing conversation about once a quarter for 20 plus years. Either he'd call me or I'd call him, and we would talk about airplanes. And just before he passed away, this is the mid 90s, I know he was dying of esophageal cancer. So I called him at USC Medical Center there in Los Angeles, and we talked about old times, and we talked about friends and mutual friends. And I said, then we started talking about things that go bump in the night. And Ben told me this is verbatim. He said, "Jim, we have things out in the desert," and he wasn't referring to Area 51, S4 maybe, but not Area 51. He said, "We have things out in the desert that's 50 years beyond what you can comprehend it, and I can comprehend a hell of a lot." And it said, if you see movies like Star Wars or Star Trek, we've been there, done that, or decided it wasn't worth the effort. And I said, "Ben, you want to expand upon that?" And he said, "No." And then he had the nerve to die on me about 10 days later in early 97. So, but also he retired in 91 from the Skunk Works. And I believe it was 93. He was he was a keynote speaker at UCLA there in Los Angeles. And he was the keynote speaker to the aeronautical graduate school. And in his prepared statement, it wasn't an off the cuff stuff, and he's really good at that. He said, "We have today the ability to take ET home." Now think about that statement. We have the ability to take ET home, but the governments, I think he was referring to all governments, will not allow that technology to be released to the general public, and it should be. And I've one of the best UFO investigators on the planet is Michael Schratt. I don't know if you've heard of Michael. He's been working with Dr. Stephen Greer in Disclosure, the
Oh
Disclosure event, and I met him 20 some odd years ago as well. So I've sort of fallen into the UFO bit, but not because that was my intent, but that's where everything sort of leads to over the course of time. Now, in June 3rd, 2021, I was at the Lockheed Skunkworks doing a book signing. I had the my 75 years of Lockheed Skunkworks. It's an Osprey publication. It's out of the UK. It's a 384 page hardbound book. It weighs 5.5 pounds. I don't know how many kilos that is, but I said 2.5 kilos or something like that. And I cover 43 programs. There's probably 43 programs I know nothing about. But the Skunkworks liked the book so much, they invited me to do a book signing with the Vice President General Manager, Jeff Babion, in June of 21. So I drove out to the Skunkworks. It's about an 8-hour drive from my house, and signed a bunch of books. And then we're heading over to the U-2 operation, which is at the same on the same airfield. And I looked at Jeff right now. We're in the back of the limousine. I looked him square in the eye. I said, "Okay, Jeff, how much UFO alien technology is being utilized in skunkwork programs?" And without hesitation, he said, "I have no knowledge." Now, he could have said, "I can't comment," or whatever, but he said he had no knowledge. He said, "Lockheed also has a policy. We do not comment at all on UFOs, flying saucers, UAPs, whatever you want to call them." I said, but he said, "Personally, we're in a big universe. I can't imagine we're the only ones." So I did ask him, but then he said, "It doesn't mean that UFO technology wasn't utilized in programs that I'm not aware of. It may be above my pay grade. It may have been developed before I got here. And my job is not to look into the past. My job was to look to the future." Says, I use people like you, referring to me, in your books to know what happened in the past." And but he said he had no knowledge of any alien technology being utilized. And I believe, you can look into a person's eyes, and he's not. If he was a politician, I would say, "Yeah, sure, bull." But being he wasn't, he's an engineer. And you can tell, he looked me straight in the eyes when he said, I have absolutely no knowledge.
Yeah.
And I believe him.
Right. So, and as you say, you were there with one of your books because you're such a great military historian and have been for over 16 years. And you were there. And you mentioned that you were creating and discussing and outlining 43 different programs. What specifically do you mean about programs, and what kind of programs, are in this book, and what's the book called?
Well, the first airplane to come out of the Skunkworks was 1943. It turned out to be called the P-80. It was the non-fighter version. Turned out to be the T-33 jet trainer. And there's still some T-33s flying today that were built in the early 50s. But it went from the P-80, it went to the F-104 Starfighter, and then there's a few others in between. And then it went to the U-2 spy plane, the one that Francis Gary Powers was shot down over Russia on May 1st, 1960. And then from there, it went to the replacement for the U-2, the A-12 Oxcart. That was the single place CIA Blackbird. And that morphed into the fighter version called the YF-12, and then the Air Force Strategic Reconnaissance version called the SR-71. And then from the SR-71, there was a bunch of other small little programs, but then you came forward with the F-117 stealth fighter. That was the first fully 100% low observable fighter. Actually, it was an attack aircraft to go operational. And they built 59 of them. They lost a couple to crashes. They had actually 2 shot down over Bosnia during the war in the former Yugoslavia, and that was because of mission planning more than anything else. So it's and then I go up to the current stuff. They were working on not cold fusion, but it was a compact fusion reactor, and they spent millions of dollars on it. I think the program either went really, really black, or it was canceled because no one talks about it now. And that's a lot of things have happened that way. The engine for the Blackbird, that was a white program. That was a non-classified program. It was a generic engine developed for the Navy for a fleet defense interceptor. And when Kelly Johnson needed an engine, a motor to take this 105-foot long spy plane to 85 to 95,000 feet in altitude at above 2,200 miles an hour, he chose the Pratt & Whitney J58, which is an engine developed primarily for the Navy. And it's really ironic that it was used in a Air Force / CIA airplane. And it's the only engine ever rated for continuous afterburning and continuous for hours on end. So it was probably, and the Blackbird was also the very last airplane to be designed exclusively with slide rules. We didn't have computers back in the 50s and 60s. So you had, my dad had a slide rule. It had to be, over a meter in length, maybe a little bit less than that, but it was huge. And he had a big magnifying things on it. And that was his supercomputer. And that's what engineers used back in the day. That and a yellow pad and a Monroe calculator for doing some of the long, long division or multiplication or whatever. But today we're spoiled. This thing that we have in our back pocket, or in your case, in your purse or your briefcase, that is more powerful than all the computers in the entire world in the mid 1980s, just on this particular phone. And I've been in sort of that area as well, and I've seen it go from a disk drive that used 14-inch platters to the 8-inch floppy, and then you went to the 5.25-inch floppy disk, and then you went to the 3.5-inch diskette, and now you can go get an SD card, which is the micro ones are this big, as big as my thumbnail. You can get a terabyte of information on that right there. Mm-hmm. And that just blows me away. I grew up in what is now called Silicon Valley. I grew up in the Mountain View, Los Altos area. And I was actually there for the conception, not the birth, but the conception of Silicon Valley. In the summer of '56, the head of Fairchild Camera contacted my dad. My dad was a genius, and there wasn't anything he couldn't master. And the president of Fairchild Camera got hold of my dad. He said, "Jim, Fairchild Camera's starting up a new division. We want to grow silicone crystal on a commercial basis for the first time in North America. Can you develop the equipment used for monitoring the growing of the crystals?" So in the summer of 1956, we built 11 crystal growers in our one-car garage in Los Altos in the Mountain View area of California. And that was literally the conception of Silicon Valley, because that Fairchild Semiconductor company changed its name a couple years later to Intel. And you don't get any bigger from chip people than Intel. And to think that as an 11-year-old kid or 12-year-old kid, I was using wax string to tie down all the wire bundles. We hand round resistors and whatever. And there's still one of those machines left in an R&D facility at Intel. And I would love to get access to it to say, hey, I helped build that thing when I was 11 or 12 years old. Mm-hmm. And so I've always been around technology. So I've always found it fascinating. And I've always been fascinated with machines. And that's how I got involved in airplanes. And that's how I've got involved in submarines. I like like planes, trains, and automobiles. That's sort of what I love. And they're machines. And it's just been a fun trip down memory lane. But Ben Rich, I don't know how I got on his side, but he loved my my love affair of all things Lockheed Skunkworks. And
Mhm.
I think that's what he admired in me. And he also admired Mr. John Andrews. John was the head of development for Testers, the model company. They came out with a big C-130 and came out with a big Blackbird. They came out with Bob Lazar's sports model. And Bob was the first big whistleblower. And I've known Bob before he went to work out in the desert. And before that, he didn't believe in UFOs. You couldn't put a gun to his head and say, hey, UFOs are real. And I can get into how I met him and whatever, but I met him through John Lear.
Mhm.
And because my passion with Area 51 and spooky airplanes, I've been to the fence line at Tonopah Test Range or Area 51 on 80 different occasions over the last 40 years. And I've had little red dots in my chest. I've been threatened. I've had guns pulled on me. And I just more or less go, I don't let them get to me. I know what the rules are. I know where I'm at. A good example, and I'll get into a little bit more with my friend John Lear, and he passed away, was it a year and a half ago now? No, it was March of 22, so it's 2 years now. God damn flies. 1996, Tonopah Test Range, where the F-117s used to fly out of before they moved to Holloman, and now they're retired, or mostly. I heard, they said that site went into caretaker status, but I had heard just the opposite. And from someone who actually was there, he said, "Yeah, we just installed a third perimeter around the flight line, fence perimeter with sensors and whatever." Installed the most sophisticated fiber optics communication system in the United States military they refer to it as TTR. So in June of 96, I called up my buddy John Lear. I said, I'm coming into town. He lived in Las Vegas. I said, let's go snoop on the government. He said, I'm all for you. So we head out there, and we're out there at night. It's about 11 o'clock at night. We're sitting in our lawn chairs. We have Generation 1 night vision goggles. And I see 3 armored personnel carriers coming up, one from the south, one from the west, one from the east. The lights are turned off. I stand up and yell real loud, hey, we're good guys, we're taxpayers. And all of a sudden, boom, I have floodlights on us. John has 3 little red dots dancing on his chest. I have 3 little red dots on my chest. About the same time, vehicles coming down the public land side, excuse me, and the guy comes out, he has his hand on his Beretta. He's in Desert Utilities. They call it the chocolate chip version. He said, you're in a restricted area and I'm ordering you to leave. And I said, sir, I don't know who you are, but this is public lands. I don't need your permission to be here. I said, you're in a restricted area and I'm ordering you to leave. I said, who are you? I said, well, I'm Captain so-and-so with ASI, Advanced Security Inc. I said, sir, you're a rent-a-cop. You don't have jurisdiction on this side of the fence. And he really started getting really, really bent out of shape. You can see the muscles and the veins popping out of his head. And I said, I had an aeronautical map printed by the United States government in my back pocket. And I pulled it out. I said, according to this official government publication that gives the longitude and latitude of this restricted areas, I'm on public lands and I don't need I can be here for 15 consecutive days without asking anybody's permission. And he's getting more and more bent out of shape. And I said, if you look at the base of that fence post where my friend has his feet up on the barbed wire, you'll see a USGS medallion that gives the longitude and latitude to the second. I'm on public lands. I can be here for 15 consecutive days without asking anybody's permission. Well, I want to see some ID. I said, oh, shit, excuse me. I just lost track. I hate that.
The rental car guys hassling you at the in your letter.
No. So, yeah, you're going to edit this probably, so that's okay. So the captain says, I've been deputized by the state of Nevada to uphold the laws and regulations of the federal government, the state of Nevada, Lincoln, Esmeralda, and Nye County. And I said, well, good for you. So I want to see some ID. And I said, well, tell you what, you show me yours, I'll show you mine. So he hands me his ASI badge, his Advanced Security Inc. badge. I said, sir, that's not a valid form of ID. I need something issued by the state or federal government. And you can just, he can almost not talk. He's so pissed at me. And so finally I said, I tell you what, so he hands me his Nevada driver's license, and I don't have my reading glasses on. Yeah, okay. So I lived in Minnesota at the time. I pulled mine out. John Lear lives in Las Vegas, and he had his, and he takes them and hands it to a guy. Now it's about 11:30 at night. Hands it to a guy on the south side of the fence, who takes it to the supervisor's armored personnel carrier. And I don't know if I can use profanity, but you can beep that out. He turns the light on, and I hear him say, "Oh shit, it's Goodall and Lear." The lights went off, the red dots went away, and they dispersed.
Oh my
So
God, that's brilliant. That is brilliant.
I've been a pain in the butt. I've been a pain in the butt to people in and around Area 51 for almost half a century.
That's so great. And so just going back briefly, for those that don't know, you're talking about John Lear, as in Lear jets.
Yes, John's dad was William Lear. On John's 16th birthday, he flew one of his dad's Lear 23s, one of the very first ones off the line. He flew around the world on his 16th birthday. He when he died 2 years ago, he still held 15 FAI World Aviation records for circumnavigating the Earth. And because William Lear was into a lot of things, he had friends in the Soviet Union, he had friends in China, so he was allowed to cross over through Iran, through the southern part of the Soviet Union, sort of cutting off through China on the way back home. And it was something that could only be done once, and it was done by John. John was probably the biggest character I've ever met, and you didn't know if he was pulling your leg or telling the truth. But because of my friendship with John Lear, that went back over almost 45 years when he passed away, I met Bob Lazar, the first whistleblower, because of John Lear. And the way that went, in November of 1988, the Air Force announced the existence of two very classified stealth programs, the B-2 stealth bomber and the F-117 stealth fighter. I think the stealth fighter was on the 11th and the B-2 was on the 22nd of November. Well, the first week of January of 1989, I called up Lear and I said, "Hey, I'm heading your direction. Let's go see if we can find ourselves an F-117. So I flew into Las Vegas the beginning of the first full week of 1989, rented a car, and we're heading north on US 95 out of Las Vegas. We're heading into the town of Tonopah. And about 2/3 of the way up there, just past Scotty's Junction, an F-117 flew right above us at about 1,500 feet. I about crashed the car. I mean, it was like seeing a flying saucer as far as I was concerned. So we got to Tonopah. We got a quick bite, and we hit US 6, and you head east about 14 miles, and you come down. This is the middle of nowhere once you leave the town of Tonopah. There's a big sign that says Tonopah Test Range. It's run by Sandia. And on the top of it is a nuclear weapon. It's a B-43 nuke. And it's inert, and it's just part of the sign. So we turn down that road. You go 18 miles to the main gate of Tonopah Test Range. Oh, I was in the military, at the time I was retired by then. No, I was still in the military at the time. And but I couldn't get on that base. So we go along the fence line. We go down about 2 miles, and you can look down on the entire base. Anybody can do it. You could do it if you decided you wanted to drive out there. You need a high. I used a pickup truck or a Jeep or something versus we did it in a Cadillac Eldorado, and it was kind of fun. But we got out there and we could see the whole base. And I looked to the north, and there's a fuzzy black ball coming towards us with a little white light underneath, and then a smaller bluish white dot with another light. I figured that was the F-117 and chase plane. Now, this is before digital cameras, so I'm shooting Kodacolor print film, Kodacolor 100, fine grain film. I had a Nikon with Nikon lenses, and I had my 80 to 200 zoom. And as the viewfinder started filling up with this F-117, I was a 10-year-old boy seeing a naked woman for the first time. My body started vibrating. I couldn't stop shaking. This was exciting. So I went through all the exposures. I think it was 36 or 37 prints. Unwound it, put the film in my pocket, so I didn't out of enthusiasm open it up and lose it. So I told John, let's get back to Las Vegas. I need to get to a photomat. Now, photomats are, if you have white hair, you probably, and lived in the colonies in the States, you probably know what a photomat is. It was it was actually a franchise from Kodak. You had a little kiosk, like the baristas now selling coffee, use those same buildings, middle of a parking lot, a shopping center, or whatever. And you drive up, they'd hand you an envelope, you write your name on it, you tear the tag off, you'd put your film in it and you hand it back to them. You haven't even gotten out of your car, and then you come back the next day or 2 days later. So I know we weren't going to be in Vegas early enough to get to a photomat, which means I'm going to have to wait at least 2 more days to see if I have anything worthwhile, because I was shaking so much. I didn't know if I thought maybe all of them were going to be blurred. And so we leave Tonopah. We continue east on US 6. We come to Warm Springs. That's the northern terminus of the extraterrestrial highway, Nevada 375. That goes by the little alien in Rachel, Nevada. Excuse me. So we head down there. It's about 100 miles to Rachel. And we get there, and I've known Joe and Pat Travis. First time I went to the little alien was 1987. So we grab a quick bite. We head back to Vegas. John lived in a big house, backs up to Sunrise Ridge, and that's the mountain you see behind Nellis Air Force Base. So we get there, it's after 9 o'clock, about 9:15, and John says, I got a text from a new friend of mine. He's going to be here in about 10 minutes. I think you'll like him. So fine. So, we get, I'm still all charged up of having an F-117 photo of my very, very own. And knock on the door, John goes answer the door, and in comes this nice, soft-spoken gentleman, and introduces himself as Bob Lazar. Says, I'm interviewing for a job out in the desert. I used to work at Sandia in Albuquerque, developing nuclear weapons. And I'm waiting for my Q clearance to be upgraded. Now, Q clearance is same as a top secret clearance, but it's for civilians. So he was already at that level, and they had to upgrade him even more to go to work where he eventually went to work. I got a cough. Hold on a second. Excuse me. It's allergies. So he said, "Hey, I have a C-41 processing unit at home. To keep me busy, I process film for realtors." I said, "Fine, let's go." So we jumped in his car. We're about a block from John Lear's house, and Bob Lazar looks at me. He says, I feel sorry for that dumb son of a bitch Lear. I said, what do you mean? I said, the idiot believes in UFOs. How stupid is that? He says, I'm a nuclear physicist. If I can't prove it mathematically or put my hands on it, it doesn't exist. So last May, I asked him, I was up at his house. I said, do you remember what you told me the first time that we met? He said, yeah. I said, what was that? And he said, I didn't believe in UFOs. I'm a nuclear physicist, because he has a photographic memory.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I didn't believe in UFOs then. So people who say, oh, he's a fraud, he's a charlatan, bull. Bob, I don't think Bob knows how to tell a lie. I mean, he's the most straightforward, kind, considerate person. And he has the most wonderful wife. Her name is Joy. And I just, she's almost as old, you know, she's just getting ready to turn 70. She looks like she's 35. And no, you know, no cut and paste or body work on the face or whatever. She's a skin specialist. You know, she did beauty products and stuff like that, and she always has. And she's just a sweetheart. So I'm going to be up at his place for 2 or 3 days this coming May, and I think Luigi Venatelli, he's the one who's doing the new Lazar movie,
Mm-hmm.
and even Bob, who's I'm a technical advisor on that movie, which tickles me. Bob's seen some of the clips he hadn't seen before, and he was blown away on how real it was. So it's coming out. I think they're going to have the premiere. The premiere is going to be in Las Vegas, and Luigi said they're trying to get the Sphere in Las Vegas for the world premiere. And I've been invited, and I'm inviting my friend Michael Schratt, and then Jared Murphy, who is he's written a book called It's Not Aliens. He and his girlfriend are going to come, and then another friend of mine who's a Disney artist. You know, Luigi says, you know, you can get, I'll give you up to up to a dozen VIP passes. So I'm going to be there for the world premiere of the new movie, and it should really be a kick in the rear. And I always enjoy my time with Bob Lazar. He's just fun. I've been in his lab. It's a 20 by 30 or maybe 20 by 40 building, and it's filled with all the stuff that he does. And the guy's a blooming genius. I mean, he has even way back when I first met him, I know how geniuses think and how they talk. And my dad was. My dad went to Caltech. He taught at Stanford. He was an electrical engineer. And he had an IQ of over 175. So I've been blessed with some of his good genes, and I've been blessed with a really good memory. And that's, a lot of people can't tell you what happened last week. I can tell you what happened when I was as young as 18 months, maybe 3.5 years old, stuff like, and music brings me back. Music's my time machine.
Yeah.
So, but my love of airplanes started when I was real little. Yeah, I was when I was 5 years old or thereabouts. We're living here in San Jose in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I'd already gone to bed, and my dad came into the bedroom, and it was still light out. He says, I don't know what's coming, but you got to see it. So we went outside, and coming over the Coast Mountains were not one, not two, but 24 Convair B-36s. The B-36 at the time was a strategic bomber, had 10 engines, had 6 pusher props and on each, 3 on each wing, and 2 jet engines on each wing. Had a 260-foot wingspan. It could fly unrefueled for 60 hours.
Amazing.
And they were just coming back. It was a show of force to the North Koreans and the Chinese that don't mess with us. because when they left Guam, there were actually 37 of them at Guam, but they could only get 24 in the air. It was a real maintenance nightmare to keep the B-36 in the air. They all took off. They flew, between Taiwan and mainland China through the Straits of Formosa to come home. It was a show of power, and that's what cemented me into airplanes and big machines. Fast forward to I'm about 9 or 10 years old. I'm living in Mountain View, which is in Silicon Valley. My best friend's dad was commander at Moffett Field Naval Air Station. We were referred to as Captain Smith's son and that friend of his. we had the run of the base. I mean, everybody knew who we were, and we were actually invisible. We were there so much that we're hiding in plain sight. We didn't ride our bikes down the taxiways. We didn't go out to the runway, but we could go right into the big hangar at Moffett Field, ride our bikes right down the center, and no one would even look up because we were always there. And at the far end was an area that was cordoned off. It had black curtains, and it was a keep out sign. It didn't say use of deadly force authorized, but it was the airplane that we were going to go see was still classified secret. So here these 2 9 or 10-year-old boys park our bikes, open the curtain, and I'm looking at the prototype F-104 Starfighter. That's the one little short stubby wings. It was a Mach 2 airplane. It was a Skunkworks design. And I'm just sitting there, and I can't believe what I'm looking at. Now, it had been at the NASA wind tunnel complex there at Moffett Field. And it was NACA back before it became NASA. And Danny said, why don't you get in the cockpit? Well, I said, and he like in the movie Christmas Story, I get double dog dared me to get in. So we open the canopy. I get into the cockpit. We close the canopy. He latches it. I'm sitting there for about 2 minutes, and all of a sudden it hits me. I'm sitting on an ejection seat. And I wasn't aware of the fact that they would disarm the seat before they put it inside the wind tunnels. And it wasn't going to be flying anytime soon. So I go to unlatch the canopy, and I'm not strong enough. It's jammed or something. Danny can't do it. Oh, so I'm really starting to panic now. So Danny goes out on the hangar floor, got some chief that was maintenance supervisor there, and they called some Lockheed reps. They called the Marine Guards. They called Shore Patrol, and they got in there and they opened me up, and I got my butt chewed out. And 70 years later, it still hurts. But that was my first involvement with the Lockheed Skunkworks airplanes. Was in the early part of 54. I think it was 54 or 55. And so that right there, I mean, I was hooked. Spooky airplanes, far out looking airplanes. That was my passion. Mm-hmm. So I joined the Air Force in March 1962, primarily because I wanted to be around and see fun airplanes. I was stationed, I had tech school at Shepherd Air Force Base in Wichita Falls. So if they're going to give the world an enema, they'd stick it right downtown Wichita Falls. It's really a terrible place. At least it was back then. They had signs, even in the regular department stores, no dogs or GIs allowed. And we had 20,000 troops there at Shepherd Air Force Base. So there was a lot of part of Wichita Falls with off limits to military, but that's beside the point. So I'm there. I'm now a communications specialist. I'm a two-striper. I'm an E3, and I get a set of orders to go to Edwards Air Force Base to help support 3 programs. They're going into Category 1 testing. That's the initial flight testing. It was the YC-141 Lockheed Starlifter, the North American Aviation XB-70 Mach 3 bomber. They only built 2 of them. They crashed 1. And a classified program. Well, that classified program turned out to be the Blackbird. And on March 10th, 1964, which was just a couple days ago, was my 60th anniversary of seeing the Blackbird for the very first time. and it had affected me for the rest of my life in a good way and a bad way. And so that's really the avalanche that started my quest and my obsession with the Blackbird. And that's what led me to get to know Ben Rich. And I've met most of the heads of the Skunkworks. They all like my books. Matter of fact, 5 of the 11, from Kelly Johnson to the current gentleman, their 2 favorite books are my SR-71 pictorial from Sheffer Publishing and my 75 years of Lockheed Skunkworks from Osprey out of the UK. And it's just, I hated term papers. I hated writing. I hated doing anything having to do with books. I was a good student or I was a bad, there was no in between. I either really liked the class, got good grades, or I terrorized the teacher. And at one time I wanted to become a history teacher. Then I realized, I'll probably have students like me and I don't want to die on death row. So I decided not to do that. But I had, my total military service is 27 years. I had 5 years active duty in the Air Force, and I had a 10-year break, and then I had 21 years with the Minnesota Air Guard as their wing historian and their chief scrounger. And in August, and I had an ongoing relationship with Ben Rich, the former, the late president of the Lockheed Skunkworks. In August of '89, Ben Rich calls me at home. He said, Jim, I got it from the, he was to say the horse's rear end, but he stopped. He said, I got it from the horse's mouth. He said that the Blackbirds aren't going to make it through Congress. And if anyone could scrounge one, it's you. All right, I'm going to take on the challenge. So I headed over to the guard bases before cell phones. I called the adjutant general of the state of New York. The secretary answers the phone and said, General Weaver's office. I said, yes, ma'am, this is Sergeant Goodall with the 133rd. It was the 133rd Airlift Wing, the Minnesota Air Guard. Says, is the general available? Just a minute, Sarge, I'll put you through. General Weaver gets on. Excuse me. He said, Sarge, how can I help you? And I said, General, I have a proposition for you. He said, what's that? He said, how would the New York Air Guard like to move the world's fastest airplane in a couple of your C-5s? Stopped me, dead silent for a few seconds. He said, you mean the Blackbird? I said, yes, sir. He said, when you're ready, you call Will Hall. Now, to put it in perspective, Pratt & Whitney wanted to get a Blackbird for West Palm Beach. That's where they developed the engine for the Blackbird. Started out in Hartford, Connecticut, but all the testing was down at West Palm Beach. And they wanted to put a Blackbird on a wind vane. So even during hurricanes, it would always be pointed into the wind. And they asked Air Force, can we lease a C-5 to move it? Because a lot of the Blackbirds that were going to museums didn't fly. And to move them cross country, it's like $3 a mile or $4 a mile, not counting dismantling. It's really expensive. And Air Force said, yeah. I said, well, we'll lease you a C-5. Is almost $1 million a day plus gas. And I scrounged 2 C-5s for 8 days of peace. Wow. But the most exciting part of that, of us taking the airplane apart, is we cut the wings off. I was assigned the 8th production Blackbird. On October 10th of '91, we flew into Air Force Plant 42 in Palmdale, California, and a group of us, it was myself and 12 other guys, took the wings off the airplane in 2.5 days to get it ready to be put inside a C-5. We left after 3 days, came back at the end of the month when we could schedule the C-5s to come in to pick it up. And when we rolled the Blackbird into the C-5, at the time, it was the largest object ever carried internally in an operational aircraft. Now, the Beluga that Airbus uses, that's a one-off. The Dreamlifter that Boeing uses as a one-off. I mean, you know, they made 3 or 4 of them, but that's it. And it's just for moving stuff. The C5 is an active duty, is still active today. And when we rolled it in, we had on the floorboards, we had about 1.5 inches of total clearance. I mean, we had this much clearance on either side of the floor rails. But on the 27th of October of 91, we came back, we loaded the C5 with the Blackbird, another C5 with the engine nacelles and outer wing panels. And we flew from there to Travis up north of San Francisco to spend the night and to get gas the next morning, or get gas that day. Then the next morning we took off heading to Minnesota. And we're about 45 minutes out, and the chief master sergeant is getting ready to go downstairs and check the load. I said, "Can I go with you?" And he said, "Well, normally the answer would be no, but since this is your project, sure." So we went downstairs, and here's my airplane. I mean, it's not a lot of room, but I got up to the landing gear. I climbed up the landing gear. I walked along the chines. I had a wheel chock on the canopy to keep it open because the counterbalance was out of nitrogen. And I lifted the canopy up. There was a bucket in there with a cushion that I put in there earlier. And I sat in there and I put the wheel chock down between legs and I closed the canopy. And I'm in there for about 45 minutes going zoom, zoom. I mean, I'm in a Blackbird in the air.
Wow. Wow.
And finally, there's a wrap on the bottom, and we got to go back up. So we go back up, and now we're coming in. We're starting our descent into Minneapolis, and the chief comes back and he said, "Jim said the boss said you can be in the cockpit when we land." I said, "Well, I'm already in the front." He said, "No, downstairs." So I got back in the cockpit. We landed on the 28th of October. Next morning, I called Ben Rich. I said, "Ben," I said, "I think I have a Blackbird thing that no one else could do." He said, "What's that?" And I said, "I'm the only person on the planet to have been in the cockpit of a Blackbird at 33,000 feet at Mach 0.72 inside another airplane, and I landed it." And Ben Rich just started laughing. He said, "Jim," he says, "I was laughing so hard I almost wet my pants." So that's my claim to fame, and
Right.
no one can top it. No one can top it.
That is pretty spectacular for sure. Let me ask you a question, Jim. With
Sure.
Ben Rich, Ben Rich, the president of Lockheed Skunkworks, he told you that they had equipment back in the 60s that could literally take ET home. Did he tell you in brief where he got that they were working directly with extraterrestrials, yes or no?
No, because when I asked him, "You want to expand upon that?" And that's when he said no. And then he had the nerve to die on me 10 days later.
Right. So what are your thoughts? Where did it come from, Jim? Where did the information and the technology come from, in your opinion?
Well, I think Earth has been being visited since the beginning. You and I may be the offsprings of aliens. Yeah, because the humanoids had to come from somewhere, and there's no missing. There's missing links. They can't see the change from Lucy, who's it was a hominin, humanoid, but not a Homo sapien. And then you had Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal and whatever. But there's nothing in between those various types of Homo erectus.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden you have the humans as you and I know it.
Mm-hmm.
I think they came in, the aliens came in and seeded the world with humans and animals. There's some jokes going around. It says they're using us Earth as an insane asylum for the universe, because we really have some crazy people here.
Yeah, we've been running things. All right, let me also bring you back in here for a second, because there are a couple of other things. I mean, obviously, your story is absolutely fascinating. Your long-term career, seeing all of these incredibly engineered craft of all manner, Air Force. military craft. You've had the joy of flying and seeing and witnessing, and you recall everything so amazingly. I remember seeing a Lancaster bomber when I was in Calgary, Alberta, and that took my breath away. I couldn't believe witnessing that beautiful giant aeroplane was just beyond. But I wanted to also say to you, because you and I were chatting, and I was saying to you that in my honest opinion and from my own physical experience of meeting physical ETs, not in my imagination, not watching TV, and seeing many different craft, that I truly believe that at least 50% of the craft we see that we think is alien driven is actually military driven, military reversed engineered anti-grav machinery that we know that the military have had for years. And you said to me, well, what did you say to me, Jim?
Well, I firmly believe, just based on what and my mind's like a big sponge. I try to bring everything in, and I try to filter the crap out. I'd be willing to say that 85 to 90% of the UAPs or UFOs that we see are man-made, and it's 10 to 15% is alien.
Interesting.
Yeah, and and within the last couple of years, the amount of sightings that have been seen, both in the underwater type, the Tic Tac, the TR-3B type.
Yeah.
Any object you see up there, whether it's a craft or a triangle or whatever, if it has red or green lights on it, and a lot of the UFOs have been seen with wingtip lights, that's man-made. Teledyne Ryan had the TR-3 TR-3A, I think it was, and it was a triangle. It was prototype to fly it, and I think it was about a 3 or 4 foot wingspan. So the TR-3B would be a logical evolution to that craft. There's Bob said he worked on anti-gravity. He had the anti-gravity machine. You have your element 115 that you put into the wave generator, and people say, well, there's no such thing as element 115. Bob Lazar is full of baloney. Oh, he actually said worse than that. And lo and behold, it was about 3 or 4 years later, 3 or 4 years ago, they announced, I think in Switzerland, that we have created element 115. It doesn't last very long. It's very minute quantities, but it exists. What Bob Lazar said was real. And no one's ever been able to dispute what Bob has said. They said, well, he's a plant. No, he's not. He was asked in the early 90s, if you would just tell us you saw little green men, or you saw the grays, or you saw the reptilians, or you saw, I guess they call them the Swedes. They're tall, blonde, hairy humanoids.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Nordics. And he said, I've seen references to them. There were posters in the hallways showing an ET, and it says, "We are here." But I never saw they call them the little people, or the kids, because they're short.
Yeah, the little grays. Yeah, no one ever saw little green men. They really are a figment of the
Yeah.
taking to make people feel stupid. But did you ever witness? So clearly, what you're saying, Bob Lazar is your long-term friend, and he's never said to you that he's actually seen ETs, but he has worked on this incredible technology, and that you believe he isn't a plant, because he has been accused of being a plant. Did you ever, in your military career in the Air Force, witness any behaviors to do with the secret societies, Masons, CIA bad behaviors, moving? There's Project Studebaker that's apparently one of these, quoted projects where Bush, the old fart that died, was one who was flying around, drugs, children, that kind of thing. Did you ever hear any of those kinds of rumors or have eyes on anything like that?
No, no, I know there's 100,000 kids a year disappear. We don't know why. John, to step back to John Lear for a minute, John was really into UFOs big time. And he was the chief pilot for American Transair. And he would go and give lectures, give lectures on UFOs and aliens and abductions. But one of the things he did over the course of his many years doing what he did is he actually tracked down 15 people that had sworn that they were abducted by aliens. And he would fly to the city, and before he got there, he'd make arrangements with a certified deep hypnosis specialist, someone who's who works in a clinic. This is what they do. They're not a crackpot. To put these abductees into deep hypnosis to see if they could bring out what they experienced. And of the 15, and there was no interconnection between any of the 15 people, they were scattered all over the country. Of those 15 people, 13 people had the exact same experience of being abducted. What happened, what they felt, what they could sense, what they could sort of see, said two of them said they were just outright bogus. They were hoping to get some fame and fortune, to be I'm a certified abductee. The people that were abducted, none of them had anything higher than a high 2-digit IQ. I mean, there were no brain surgeons or astrophysicists in the group, but they were just average, everyday bumpkins that go to work Monday through Friday, or work in the factories or work in the stores or whatever. They weren't anybody special. They didn't have any technical background, but their stories, 13 of the 15, were identical. And John Lear put his money where his mouth is. A reporter in Houston went to one of John's lectures, and this guy had a bug up his butt, and he wanted to destroy Lear for talking about phony UFOs. So the guy calls the president of American Transair. They're out of Indianapolis, Indiana, and said, "Your chief pilot is a nutcase. Either you cut him, either you tell him to cease, or you cut him off at the knees, or I'm going to go public and I'm going to destroy your airline." Well, what a very, very nice, pleasant thing to do, you jackass. So John got called into the office, and the president said, "Hey, I got this reporter from Houston who wants to expose you and cause the airline a lot of trouble." He said, "If you promise me from this point forward that you won't talk about UFOs, I'll forget this happened." And John said, "I can't. I believe in this 100%, and there's no way that I'm going to lie about myself and my self-interest." So he was fired right there. I mean, he was making $150,000, $200,000 a year as a chief pilot, and he walked away from it. Well, then his wife went absolutely ballistic, and on one of his trips, she emptied out his office. He had like 4 or 5 4-drawer filing cabinets. He had just all sorts of stuff. John came back off a trip, and his office was cleaned out. And Mary Lee said, "I'm not going to tell you where they're at." Says, "You've aligned yourself with some real bad players, and you got fired from a job that paid almost $250,000 a year. And what are you going to do now?" And he said, "You can't." Says, I won't allow," and how his wife could say that, "I won't allow you to give your number out to anybody but who I approve of." Unfortunately, Mary Lee liked me, so that was sort of a given. But John put his money where his mouth was when it came to abductees and UFOs. Now, I've been at the black mailbox in Tippecanoe Valley. They're east of Area 51, and it was a incredibly beautiful day, not a cloud in the sky, and just a sliver moon. And as it went behind the horizon, there was still a blue, a bluish glow at the very base. It was so dark I couldn't see my feet. So
Hmm.
I'm standing there and say, okay, I've been told that aliens can read minds if you concentrate hard enough. So I'm sitting there and I say, okay, abduct me. Abduct me. Let me bring my Nikon with me, but abduct me. And I mean, I was thinking as hard as I could. And and to my knowledge, I haven't been abducted, so apparently it didn't work. But I mean, they're there. They're there. It's not a joke. It's real.
Mm. It's not a joke, and
Yeah,
the militaries across the world have frankly really delayed, the advancement of humanity. And of course, they're under orders, but there's also a lot of infiltration. There's also warlocks and witches, which sounds absolutely ridiculous, but it's not. But it's not. And it's made to sound ridiculous, and we're made to feel ridiculous, because one of the worst things for a human is, seclusion, isolation, shaming, ignoring, the silent treatment. And so as beings, we would do anything at times not to be that person. In Britain, they call
yeah.
it being sent to Coventry, which I believe was an actual maritime term too. But yeah, it's quite fascinating. So you've never seen a UFO, you've never seen an ET, but you've certainly worked in the dark or the black programs. You said to me earlier that
I mean,
as long as it's dark and it's stealthy and it's deadly, you're interested. And the submarines,
yeah, yeah,
submarines.
yeah. I mean, submarines meet all the qualifications. They're black, they're stealth, and they're deadly. Now, I did have I've been to Whiteman Air Force Base 5 times to photograph the B-2 stealth bomber. And when I was there in 2015, I can't believe it's been that many years, it's been 9 years now. I went there, and this is just before I did my B2 book from Sheffer Publishing. The last thing I did on the second day I was there, I climbed up. I was in the cockpit of a B2. I was on top of it. I was in they call it the LO hangar. That's the low observable maintenance hangar. They had every panel open. They wouldn't let me photograph in there, but they showed it to me. The very last thing on my last day there, we're off the flight line, and there's a building not that far from the flight, but it was just a building, and I didn't see the title or the name in front of it, because we came in sort of through the side, and we went in. There was a cipher lock to get in. We went upstairs and said no cameras and no recording devices. Not a problem. So then they opened up almost like a vault door. You scan the hand, and then put the code in, and the door opened up, and there's 3 doors. I mean, it's like The Price is Right. So we go to the first one, open the door, and that's a B2 full access simulator. So I thought they were just going to show it to me. So we go in, and I'm in the cockpit of the sim, and the instructor pilot said, sit in the left-hand seat. Okay. So what are we going to do? He said, we're going to go fly. So for 2.5 hours, I flew the B2 simulator. Now it took off at 127 knots. We took off. We're over Kansas somewhere. We're going to refuel with a tanker. Now, I'm not a pilot, and the B2 doesn't have any vertical stabs, and it's a flying wing, and it's a fly by wire. So when you go one way to keep going back, you have to come back. So you go this way, and then you neutralize that turn command. So I get up. It took me 3 tries to hook up to the boom, and then I separated. And I have a thing for numbers and whatever. And I looked at the screen, and I could see it. It was a real KC-135R with the Kansas Air Guard, and had the correct tail number. So I really appreciate their attention to detail. You can see the boom operator. I couldn't tell if it was male or female, but you can see the boom operator there flying the boom. So now we're doing some other stuff. We're going to do a touch and go. Damn, excuse me. So we're coming in on finals, my first touch and go. And all of a sudden, 5 hydrogen bombs go off around Whiteman Air Force Base. An instant flash, the screen goes black. And that's the, if you're wearing the radiation or the blast shield goggles, it's a face mask. Within a 1 or 2 nanoseconds, it becomes opaque. This is keep from burning your retinas out. So, bless you. So the screen's now starting to clear up, and it will be the same way the blast shield or face mask you put on during those types of operations. And I can see the mushroom clouds. So I asked the IP. I said, "Hey, can I drop one?" He said, "No, that's a classified system. But if you were to drop it, now this is 2015. If you were to drop it, where would it be?" And I said, 1600. He said, "Stop right there. 1600's Pennsylvania Avenue, the White House." So he said, "Everything in here is recorded." And I said, "Oh, okay, okay." So I didn't complete my my comment. So I mean, I'm the only guy in my neighborhood to have flown the B-2 simulator, the only one to have been in a Blackbird inside the cockpit at 33,000 feet at Mach 0.72 inside another airplane. And I was also one of the very few people in this country that can say I have 21,000 man hours restoring a de Havilland Comet, a Comet Mark 4C. There's only, it's the only one left in the Americas. There's only 9 de Havilland Comets left. That was the first jet airliner. I've seen the one at Cosford. That was a Mark 1. And I've seen a few of the other ones, the one at Duxford. And I became an expert on the restoration of the world's first jet airliner. And I said, I worked on it for 10 years. I had up to about 80 different people, volunteers helping me. And I took it from an airplane that had been filled with water and fire retardants for over a decade when they gave it to the Museum of Flight. It was about 2,500 to 3,000 gallons of water inside the airplane when they got it. It had been abandoned at Payne Field.
Gosh.
They drilled a bunch of holes in the bottom, drained the water out. And when I got there, they'd already cleaned out the interior. But when they opened the crew door for the first time, there was green slime going down from the ceiling.
Oh goodness.
And it was its own ecosystem.
Mhm.
So,
I
but
bet.
it was just trying to decipher British tech orders and how things go together. And in a device this big, I had American Standard, I had British Standard, and I had Wentworth nuts and bolts and screws. So I needed 3 complete sets of tools. And you may have all 3 of those different attachments in the same thing that's this big.
Mhm.
So whatever they had on the shelf, they put in, and that's how they put it together. But it was just a lot of fun. And
Yeah.
and my first trip to England was in 2002, and the celebration was at Cosford. It was the 50th anniversary of the first jet airliner going to commercial service, which was with BOAC, and it was the Comet 1. And they built.
What an amazing history. And again, you are a military historian. You're known in so many different factions of the military. And it's just amazing the work you've done, the attention to detail. We're so grateful to you. And the fact that you've shared with us Ben Rich and his admitting, that they had this crazily advanced technology many, many years ago, and the other things you shared with John Lear and others. There's so much, again, we could continue talking, but we've only got about 10 minutes here. I wanted to ask you to share in the next 10 minutes, if possible, your fascinating next project, because this is mind-blowing, the pyramid in Belize.
I'm 79 in 10 days, or maybe 12 days. I turned 79, but I don't let that get in my way. Last year, about this time, a buddy of mine from Minnesota said, "Hey, you want to join me? I want to, with a group, to go down to Peru initially to see if we can find some metallithic structures that are not controlled by universities so we can do some testing and a bunch of other stuff. I said, sure. Well, about a week later, they had the military coup in Peru, and Machu Picchu was closed down and all the sites were closed down. So that was canceled. But then all of a sudden, my buddy Jared Murphy, who has the book Not Aliens, said that a friend of his in Salt Lake City has 7,000 acres in southern Belize, and he knows there's Mayan ruins there somewhere. Is there some way to identify what there are? And you want to go searching for them? I said, sure. So 10 of us went down there, Jared Murphy, myself, Michael Roser, and a group of followers, I guess you want to call them. They didn't add much to the story. But we were on the property. We did find, identify 11 sites, and they were verified. But the first full day we were there for 2 weeks. The first full day we were there, we were at the Lubatum and Nimlimpuit archaeological sites. Those are two Mayan pyramids that are near Punta Gorda in southern Belize. And on the, we just finished going on Nimlimpuit. It was about a mile and a quarter walk around the top of the pyramid complex. And it started raining. It was 87 degrees and it started, you were hot and sweaty, and then it started raining. Now it's still 87 degrees, and now you're just wet. So it's just funny. But I have a real bad sense of balance. I had brain tumor removed about 40 years ago, and they severed my auditory nerve on my left side. So I can't get out of a chair and turn at the same time I fall over. So I'm real sensitive about my balance. So there was some uneven steps going down. I had 10 feet to go, and I'm done with being on the pyramid. So I decided I'm not going to walk down those steps because my balance isn't all that good. So I walked around the side. There was a path, a warm path, because other people didn't want to do it either. So I grabbed hold of this small tree as I stepped out, and all of a sudden I face plant into this pile of rubble. And because it's raining, and I got a little, when you cut yourself, you're shaving your legs or whatever, not to be personal, but you got a little bit of water on there. Blood, a little bit of water and blood goes a real long way. And a lot of blood and brain goes even longer. It looked like someone had been sacrificed there. I mean, blood was everywhere. So they patched me up. We go into this little village right outside the main entrance to Limbimpuit, and it's a little medical facility. Yeah, that's great. So we go in there, and the doctor's from Cuba, and he's looking at me, and he says, well, it's going to need some stitches. I have to wait for my nurse to come in. So I was there about 20 minutes, and we just talking. And I got 11 stitches. I had a puncture wound above my ankle and a gash underneath my knee, just below my knee. And he said, whatever you do not go into the water. Do not go into river. Do not go into brackish water in a and don't go into any water close to the shore in southern Belize. There's stuff in there that you may end up being swamp creature, so you can't do it. So I missed out going on a couple boat trips because you had to go through the mangrove swamp. You had to get out of the boat, stepped on the roots to get to dry land. And but because I gave my blood and my DNA to the Mayan gods, they decided to reward us with an opportunity of a lifetime. On the second or third day, I guess about the third day we're there, part of the group wanted to go see, there was some caves not that far from where we were at. So we head towards this village, and we see the car in front of us had pulled over, and there's a sign up there that said Uchmin Ka, which is the name of a pyramid complex. And we looked at the information we had, and it was a site that was closed. So we didn't know it was up there. So we drove up there anyway. And we were up there about 10 minutes. All of a sudden, a horde of kids with moms came up with trinkets to sell for trinkets and whatever. And then a little short guy named Alfredo comes up, introduces himself. He's the mayor of the village. And one thing led to another. And over the course of the last year, we have become very, very close to the villagers. And this particular site was very, very unique. In the mid 80s, when Belize, what used to be British Honduras, when they, after their independence, they changed the name to Belize. And they had in like 84, 85, they contracted to do a radar scan of the entire country they wanted to map out all the Mayan archaeological sites. And because this particular village was totally isolated from the real world until 2012, where they finally cut a road in about 4 or 5 miles through the jungle to connect the village to the rest of the world, they gave all the other sites in Belize are controlled 100% by the federal government of Belize. This particular site is controlled by the villagers.
Mm.
And the villagers have, I guess the women can't vote, so it hasn't been enlightened yet. But all the males of the village, the adults, opted to give us the opportunity to be the exclusive agent, if you want to call it that, for the excavation of one of the largest Mayan pyramid complex in Mesoamerica. It's 305 acres. There are 5 pyramids. One of them we refer to as Pyramid G is 261 feet from the base to the top. And that was done with some very specialized surveying equipment that we brought with us in our last trip. And it appears that it has not been pillaged. It's because it wasn't accessible until 2012. So any pillaging would be done, during the reign of the British Empire, in the area, because they came there to take the mahogany and all the hardwoods and stuff out. So we've been granted permission by the federal government of Belize to be the only organization that has been certified to do the excavation of Uchbin Ka. Mm-hmm. So I am at 79 years old. I'm playing Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom.
Yeah.
And we're working with a number of producers. Matter of fact, I have a call later on today with a money person from Hollywood. We need about $10 million to do it right. And we're going to go in and hopefully employ most of the village men in removing all the underbrush and trees and overburden, starting with one of the 5 pyramids. Mm. And the pyramids, and this is per the Belize archaeologists that man the tourist sites that have already been excavated. They now figure that between just south of Mexico City to the northern part of Colombia, they figured there were between 10 and 20 million Mayans. And of that incredible number, we said, well, what happened to all of them? We said disease when Cortez and his men came in, European diseases, they had no immunity. They were terrible farmers, and they depleted the nutrients in the ground. So the only thing that will grow in the ground are just native trees and plants and stuff. And it is just, so I asked the archaeologists, well, where did everybody go? And he said, well, a lot of people died off. The Mayans were also very brutal. If you were in a Mayan village or a Mayan family and you insulted someone from another family, they could come and kill your entire extended family, your dogs, your cats, your goats, chickens, your grandmother, your great-grandmother, everybody. They'll kill you all. So that actually added to it. And at one time on a big ceremony, I don't know how long it lasted, they sacrificed over 80,000 prisoners. So you do that every month or so, you're gonna reduce the population of the country. So the other thing that the archaeologists told us, that the pyramids are at least 2,000 years old, but now they believe with further research that they're between 20 and 200,000 years old, and the Mayans found them abandoned and repurposed them for their own use. So not more than 10 or 15 kilometers away from where we're at is where they found the crystal skull. They found it at Lubatom. And it was found when they were cleaning the overburden off the top of the pyramid. It was just laying on the ground. It may have fallen out of someone's backpack or whatever back whenever they were doing the pillaging. And they figure it's worth $6 million. They're not sure how it got there, how they managed to do the sculpture. And it's also the fifth installment of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. That was all filmed around the crystal skull and what it had. So once we start excavating, we're going to a place where no one has been. We don't know how many thousands of years ago. And you asked me earlier, where did the sports model UFO that Bob Lazar worked on? He told me, and I think he's mentioned it on Joe Rogan and a few other places, that the sports model that he was involved in reverse engineering the propulsion system was found at an archaeological site. It had been buried. Now we're going to do a LiDAR scan of this whole place, both ground LiDAR and aerial LiDAR. There is a possibility, remote as it may be, because this was one of the most significant Mayan sites in Mesoamerica back 2,000 years ago. There could be a UFO or UFO artifacts, alien artifacts at these sites.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there to excavate them.
Oh
we have to raise about $10 million.
Right.
So far, everything's been out of our own pockets. But we have the official paperwork from the
federal government,
Belize government, giving us exclusive access to the site and what we could do.
That's incredible.
So later, later on today, later on today, we have a thing with a number of producers and money people in Hollywood we're going to do a series on the excavation of it. Oak Island, I don't know if you have that, the Curse of Oak Island in the UK, but here in the colonies, it's real popular. And they've been around for 12 seasons, 13 seasons. They've been digging a hole on an island, on Oak Island, outside off of Nantucket near Massachusetts. And they found nothing. It's just a big hole.
Yeah, they've pretty much found bugger bloody all in all these years. Yeah. So when you do your massive excavation in this very wonderful, sacred, clean area of Belize, meaning that it hasn't been trampled or infiltrated, as far as you know, the way that many sites are plundered mercilessly and disrespectfully, you have to come back and share with us, because that's so exciting.
Absolutely.
So exciting. All right, well, listen, we need to come to a brief end here. It's been absolutely lovely sitting with you and listening to your
I had a wonderful time. I'm not an early riser, so it's I've been retired, I can't believe, 10 years now. Actually going 11 years. I don't know what the time's gone.
It flies, literally. It bloody flies. It's that simple.
And the older you get, the faster it goes. Now, like I mentioned earlier, I have 29 books in print. And if you want, and I specialize in low observable stealth. I saw the F-117, the Blackbird, the B-2 stealth bomber, and submarines. I have those are the subject matters that I cover. You go to probably the quickest way, you go to Amazon, Amazon.com, go on books by James C. Goodall. And it's Goodall, just like Jane Goodall. I'm related to her down the ways away. And I'm actually related to the first Archbishop of Canterbury. My great aunt was into genealogy way back in the 50s and traced the name Goodall to 1207 and the first Archbishop of Canterbury. So for all I know, I'm in the line of succession to the crown.
I'm in front of you.
Yeah,
That's hilarious. That is hilarious.
Yeah.
29 books. That's quite the author's hand there. Beautiful photographs, military historian, very well known and very much loved, clearly. Yes, you've been an absolute joy. And it's nice to really hear somebody with a long history that has such good recall, such good memory of details and dates. And you light up when you talk about the planes that you've seen and some of the subs you mentioned, but really it's clear that your passion is with the aircraft that you've been able to get near and get in fly.
I don't know if you've had any opportunity to go to Duxford or to see a Blackbird in person. It's an incredible airplane. It's 107 feet long. It's 58 feet wide. Maximum gross weight is 140,000 pounds. That moves through the air faster than a speeding bullet. It goes through the air at 32 to 3,400 feet per second during when it's in its operational environment, which is at or above 80,000 feet. The highest I've ever flown is 96.2, and the fastest is almost 2,400 miles an hour during flight test. So it's a passion of mine, and I'm blessed with an incredible memory. And my mom had one, my dad had one. So I'm blessed by good genetics. But I was delighted that we finally connected. It's been a lot of fun. I look forward to seeing the edited piece. And I've just started to look at some of the stuff that some of the podcasts I've been on. And I said, well, gee, I come across smarter than I thought. So
that's always a good thing, isn't it? It's a happy day.
Yeah, it is.
Say that
Yeah. So you have a wonderful day. And what time is it there? Your time?
It is almost 6 p.m. on a Friday night.
Okay. All right. All right. So here it's we're 10:45 or 10:46 in the morning. So you have a wonderful day, a wonderful evening. Go out and party and dance and just enjoy life, because you're not guaranteed tomorrow.
That's right.
That's why I do what I do. And people say, well, you're retired. Why don't you just sit around and do whatever? I said, if I quit moving, I'm gonna start rusting. And once you rust, you just fall apart and then you die.
That's right.
I told Jared Murphy, and I've told the villagers, that next year, a year from now, I want to have my 80th birthday on the top of Pyramid G.
Amazing.
And
yeah,
so that's gonna be a lot of fun. So,
definitely.
Danny, it was an absolute delight. Anytime, just let me know. My preference is to be a little bit later in the morning than 9 o'clock.
Indeed.
I mean, I get up at 9, but then I have my coffee and I have my breakfast, and I go through all, I get hundreds, if not thousands, of emails a day. So most of them are garbage. So, but I'm delighted to be here, and I'll be more than happy to come back anytime you want.
Lovely. That would be great. We'll definitely do another episode with you and come back and tell us all about Belize. And thank you so much, Jim Goodall. Guys out there, the author's name is James C. Goodall, a list of 29 books, and obviously the information that he shared here today. My name is Danny Henderson. It has been my pleasure to bring this beautiful man onto my platform for you to enjoy, and we will see you soon.
Thank you.